Oh, Stephen King, you dark, weird, coked-out horrorhead, you. I'm surprised that one of the bangers to come out this year would be an adaptation of one of your books. The last few years haven't necessarily been a home run with movies inspired by, adapted by, based off of, and all those other things from the mind of Stephen King. The Children of the Corn remake is going to be one of the worst horror movies of 2023. Bet on it. Also check out my review on it. Then there's Mr. Harrigan's Phone.
Who?
Seems like this one went under the radar, cause not many people talk about it and the reviews are eh. Then there's the Firestarter remake. Never saw it, but everyone seems to be hating on it. Then we got Dr. Sleep. Which is hard to judge cause alone it's a great movie. As a sequel, it's so different from The Shining it's hard to even believe that it is a sequel. I liked In the Tall Grass, but plenty of people didn't like it. It Chapter 2 was a super long, super disappointing finale to the near perfect It Chapter 1. The Pet Sematary remake had potential, but really fell short of anything really rememberable or even, good. You have to go back 6 years where he had two bangers in the same year, 1922 and Gerald's Game. So if you're keeping track, in the last 4 years, that's 4 bads, 1 mix, and 1 good. And with the latest, The Boogeyman, it's now 2 good. So the movie just came out. I'll do no spoilers and go over why I think this is worth paying to see in theaters. Then I'll let the bitches who didn't see it opening night or the next day out the fucking door, and then we can go deep into spoilers. Let's get this party started, spooky-like. So the movie is about a small family. 2 daughters, one's in high school and the other is in elementary school, and a therapist dad. The family is going through the recent loss of their mother. We don't know exactly when she passed, but the wound is still pretty fresh. The dad gets a visit from a very disturbed father who is at his limit with the trauma that he has been dealing with, and that is the inciting incident that really kicks off the main focus of the film. And that's as far as I'll go without spoilers. Let's cut this movie into little pieces and see what we are working with. The cast is pretty good acting-wise, which is a bit of a shock because I'm not really that familiar with any of these actors, so good on the directors for giving some newbies a shot at a low-budget horror flick with a big name. The biggest name in the movie is David Dastmalchian, or whatever the fuck, but he plays the surprise patient and his role in this flick is very small. The older daughter, Sadie, I guess is in Yellow Jackets, never seen it, so eh. The youngest daughter is one of those kids from Bird Box. Oh, maybe a new Scream Queen in the making. And the dad is played by Chris Messina. You might recognize him as the detective in Devil, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, but I gotta tell ya, I sure as hell didn't recognize him. And that's most of the cast. Oh, and Sadie has some shitty friends, and I mean like gas station restroom level shit, but I'll get to them in the spoilers section. Story-wise, I think the movie did a phenomenal job at getting us hooked from the beginning. Can't go into it yet, but it's perfectly set the stage that we are supposed to take this very seriously. The final positive I'll say is the creature design. That creature, the Boogeyman itself.
Perfection.
The scares in this movie are also good. Plenty of jump scares and plenty of moments where you feel trapped with the characters and it just builds up tension. Now to the negatives.
Oh man, there's always a catch!
In the movie they talk about a somewhat origin to the Boogeyman, and I just don't need it. Keep it more ambiguous, cause the answer probably won't live up to the hype of what people's imaginations could come up with. How many of you like Pennywise? Pretty cool and scary creature. Did you all like him as much when you were told that he is a cosmic alien being and the sworn enemy of God who is a giant turtle that vomited up the universe?
What?
Right, so for some of those out there creature ideas, it might be better to keep it in your pants than just exposing every detail of it for everyone to see.
What the fuck?
Moving on. There is a lot of noise and a lot of things that happen within the homes of the main characters, and it's the classic mansion effect. If something like a small bomb goes off in the home, unless you're in the room where it happens, you don't hear shit. Also, the last shot of the film is poorly written. Like, I know, and you know, or you will know what they were trying to do, but they forced it. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's really it for a PG-13 horror movie. It's pretty good. The only thing that would make it better is if they upped the kill count. I predict that this one is gonna be one of the better or the best horror movies of the year. Currently, Rotten Tomatoes critics have it at a 63 and audiences at a 67. I think both of those are too low. I rarely do this, but I would go higher than the audience did. I'd easily give it a 75, maybe a smidge higher. And plainly put, this was a nice, tight little horror movie, and I think it earned my money at the theaters, and I recommend seeing it there. But if you end up watching it at home down the road, just make sure all of your lights are turned off and prep yourself for the dark, for there be monsters. Alrighty, everybody. Let's get into the spoilers. The movie starts off with the little girl crying in her crib. Aw, poor little thing. The camera pans over to the closet, we hear some groaning, and a voice emerges. Girl cries out, "Daddy, Daddy!" The groaning morphs into a humanoid-like voice in response, "I'm your dad." Girl continues to cry and we hear a loud smack, and blood splatters on the family picture on the nightstand. Holy shit! This movie really hit the ground running with that intro. Then the screen cuts to black. Don't do it. Don't you dare do it. The next scene reveals another little girl in her room in the dark. I was so nervous that there was going to be a time jump. Nope, this movie opens solidly. The little girl has a nightlight moon orb that she kicks over to her closet and it reveals that there is nothing there. Side note, before you go to bed, just close the fucking door. Or since it is your room, put something heavy in front of it to keep it closed at night. This 6-year-old is so dumb. And that is our introduction to Sawyer, the younger sister. We then jump to an older girl, Sadie, taking a big whiff of a dress. Weird. I mean, we find out later that it's her mother's who passed away, so obviously, still weird. If you haven't figured it out by now, we are in a completely different house than before. Might throw you off a bit, but hey, they are trying. We then meet up with the dad, Will, who is having a little one-on-one with one of his patients. He is a therapist who sees patients in the home. Where have I seen this before?
Therapy doesn't work.
Doesn't work, then why do people do it?
Because they don't want to take any responsibility for their crappy lives.
Never mind. The dad then drops off the girls at school and Sadie, who is meeting up with some of the worst fucking friends ever. I mean, there have been others that have been pretty bitchy. But these ones are pretty bad. And obviously the worst one is Natalie. Not because she's super insensitive to Sadie's trauma, or when she is called out for her bitchiness and then spills moldy food onto Sadie, therefore ruining her mom's dress and then laughs about it. It's cause she's a blonde, duh.
Oh, bring it on! Let it rain down on me!
Back at the house, Will gets a surprise patient. Lester, the man appears to be distraught, and normally Will only accepts patients that he has vetted, but he makes an exception for this guy, who then later says everyone is going to blame him for the deaths of his 3 kids.
That escalated quickly.
Lester goes on to break down the deaths of his children. The first was to SIDS, but then the other 2 died 1 year apart from each other, and that the life was sucked out of them. The parents brushed off the monsters that the children were telling them, and even though one of their kids drew what it looked like. Don't get your hopes up, we don't actually see the drawing yet. Will is able to slither out of his room and call the cops. Sadie returns home without Will noticing, but Lester did. He stalks Sadie a bit, then trashes her mom's art studio. Sadie musters up the courage to confront the guy with the tiniest little knife ever made. She opens the door after hearing some noise, but sees nothing. The dad comes in as backup, and when they turn around, they see Lester hung himself on the door. The cops and Sawyer come to the house and take care of things. That night, after the dad tucks Sawyer into bed and closes her closet door, it opens, then closes, then bursts open again.
Oh no!
An invisible figure crawls under the bed, but Sawyer's no pussy and immediately looks under the bed. She rolls her little ball under and the figure runs away. She screams and falls onto the floor. I'll admit, this got me, but then I thought, where the fuck is everyone else? Sawyer then runs into Sadie's room for comfort. Sadie even helps get a loose tooth out for Sawyer, the old dental floss and the door trick. Lucky for the girls, the monster is the one that actually slams the door shut, but we aren't quite at the level of believing that doors don't slam shut on their own. Just yet. Sadie then sings Sawyer a lullaby to get her to sleep. We hear some soft groaning coming from the closet door, which slowly turns into the lullaby that Sadie was just singing.
Oh no!
The next day, Sadie and Sawyer go and see their personal therapist, and Sawyer talks about the monster in her closet. The therapist is like, ding, I got a great idea. Let's turn off all the lights except one big red one and have it flash on and off to get this 6-year-old to not be afraid of the dark. That's gotta work, right?
Do you think so?
Obviously, Sawyer freaks the fuck out because the monster's in the room with him, but she seems to be the only one who can actually see it at this time, which ups the scare level, and we do get a rough picture of the monster, and it kinda reminds me of a necromorph from Dead Space. By the way, that's one of the best horror games out there. I guarantee you'll like it if you're into scary games. At the house, we get way more activity from our resident monster. Obviously, Sawyer gets the worst of it, but Sadie is also getting its attention, and we get a few scares of the thing just hanging out in the dark, glaring at them, which has been done in movies like Annabelle and Hereditary, and honestly, keep doing them. I find them very effective. We also get some mimicking scares, so our guy is just toying with his future food at this point. I mean, guy's gotta build up an appetite, right? The next day, Sadie extends a branch of redemption to her least shit friend Bethany, asking for a ride to Lester's personal home that she was able to find online. Thanks, social media, for showing us how easy it is to track someone down. They head over to the house. Sadie goes inside alone. Not saying Bethany is a pussy for not joining her friend and going inside a rundown, shady looking house, but I'm also not saying that. Sadie goes snooping around and even leaves her number on the fridge in case she wasn't able to find anyone there. The camera pans up and we see this weird spider webbing black substance on the ceilings. At first glance it looks like mold, but if you were paying attention, Sadie did see the exact same stuff in her house, but she shrugged it off. Uh-oh. She runs into Lester's wife Rita, and their encounter isn't the most friendly considering Sadie broke into her house, and in response, Rita points a shotgun at Sadie and tells her to fuck right off. Sadie is able to get on her good side by stating that she believes the monster is real and that her sister has been seeing it. We get the backstory of the Boogeyman that I was just shitting on earlier. Rita says something along the lines of man-made fire to stay out of the dark. Sadie asks, are you saying this thing has been around since caveman times? And Rita goes, I think it's been around for longer than that. I really didn't need to know that the Boogeyman has been around since the dawn of existence. I did like that Rita was explaining how the thing likes to play with its food before eating, it can mimic voices. I would have liked it if Rita went into her version of what happened to her kids and her husband, would have felt a bit more personal. She does, however, go on to say that the monster feeds off of your misery and that's how it picks you, kind of like how most possession films go. So not only can you not be sad because you might be possessed by a demon, but you'll also have the life sucked out of you by the Boogeyman. Note to self, never be sad. Shouldn't be too hard in a horror movie. Anyways, Rita then freezes. Don't move, Sadie. It's right behind you. And then Rita starts shooting up the place. Sadie freaks the fuck out and runs out of there to her friend's car and they book it home. At home, Sadie storms up to her room. Sawyer is crying to her about the monster. Sadie yells, there's no such thing as monsters. Grow up. Slams the door closed. The door then bursts open and she gets tackled onto the bed and the monster starts sucking on her face. Sadie then wakes up from a dream.
What? Oh, come on!
What the fuck just happened? I mean, the jump scare did get me, but when did she go to bed? When did the dreaming start or stop? Was her going to the person's house a dream? Did her dream start when she was just entering into her house? I know what they were doing here, but the idea wasn't really thought out very well. Anyways, Sadie starts going through her mom's old stuff, and since she was an artist, you know she was lighting up on a daily basis.
I saw it.
The camera lingers on a lighter that she finds, clearly foreshadowing its value later on in the flick. At school, Sadie is chilling on the toilet, watching home videos, been there 50 times, and her friend Bethany invites her to hang out for the weekend, and she reluctantly agrees. The girls arrive at Sadie's house, and I don't know if it's just me, but I thought it was weird that they ended up at her house. She was clearly a last-minute invite. It begs the question of what their plans were going to be if Sadie decided not to come. So since they are bitchy high school girls, they are immediately bored because there's no booze in the house, but Sadie found some of her mom's half-used joints and they light it up. This is one of those moments where I feel like we should know how long the mom's been dead for, cause if half a joint has been sitting in spit for 6 months, I'm sure it would taste pretty rancid. Since Sadie is a noob, she immediately starts yakking. She runs into the toilet and hacks up her sister's pulled out tooth and string. Uh-oh. Old Blondie is like, so where did the guy hang himself? Sadie takes him to the closet, to which the blonde immediately shoves her in and closes the door on her. Little do they know that the boogeyman was in the closet with her. Man, this thing takes every chance it can get. I could be wrong, but it seems like this thing has a different form every time we've seen it, which I like. Kind of reminds me of that imaginary friend movie Z.
Hey Mom, look at me! Come on, come play!
Not a bad flick, I'd recommend it. Sadie's able to get out at the last second and slaps that blonde bitch. Too bad it was just one of them. She should have taken it out on all of them for participating.
Larry! Larry, you can't just... Oh, Larry! Oh, are you alright? How did you...
Bethany did say the door was jammed and they couldn't get it open, and I don't really care. She's still a shit friend. They all are, so they storm off and out of the house. The dad and Sadie go upstairs to talk about what happened, leaving the little sister downstairs in the dark with only the TV to light up the room. I don't blame her. Got a game in the dark. She immediately gets stalked by the monster, and for a sec, you're kind of like, oh, this again? But then that little girl gets dragged across the ceiling and then thrown into the TV.
Yes! Yes! Oh, yeah!
They rush to the hospital and Sadie and Will have a talk about what's going on. Sadie tries to get Will to open up about the mom's death, but he has been mostly silent about it the whole movie. She then talks about the monster, and for a sec you think Will is gonna be on board, but then he asks Sadie if she had been high. Ah, so close. Sadie storms off and gets a call from Rita, who has a plan to kill the boogeyman. Sadie walks. Wait, she walks over to Rita's rundown house? Huh. Must have been close. Was it really necessary for Sadie to not have a car or be able to drive in this movie? Cause I'm starting to question why they chose to go this route. Anyway, Sadie and Rita talk, but not for long. Rita knocks Sadie down and zip ties her to her pole, and she starts using her as bait for the monster. The monster gets close, and for a sec you think the tripwire is not going to work, and then the monster lunges forward and sets off the traps. About 6 shotgun shells go off and the thing just lies motionless on the ground. Okay, this is another gripe I have with the flick. I like the idea of setting a real trap for the monster, but it's just shells pointed towards the center of the room. They aren't in a tube, and I seriously doubt that they are slugs. Meaning they are filled with dozens of little balls, and without the shells being in a tube to direct them, they're just gonna spread all over the place and rip Sadie to pieces. But of course that doesn't happen. She's completely unscathed. Anyways, Rita fires off another 2 shots just to be safe. Smart chick, but it didn't work. The boogeyman wakes up and tears her face off. Sadie's able to escape and call her dad. She warns them to stay in the light and to be careful inside because the monster could already be there, and on cue, Will and Sawyer get ripped into the dark void that is the front door of their house. Sadie runs home, literally, and is able to find Sawyer hidden in the closet and wrapped in Christmas lights. She says that the dad is downstairs with the monster. Sadie grabs a hockey stick, not sure what the fuck you're gonna do with that, but I guess it's better than nothing. She tells Sawyer that she saw it bleed, it can be hurt, maybe they can stop it. Sorry kid, but there's only one way that line of dialogue can be delivered and only one man can say it.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Sadie goes down, followed by Sawyer with her spray can and Christmas lights. She knocks down a small gas can. Gee, wonder why we were shown that. The boogeyman leaps on top of Sawyer, and this is our first chance of getting a real good look at this thing. And I am in love. So it's basically a black necromorph. Its jaw unhinges with the help of 2 bloody arms, forcing it open from the inside. They reach out to Sadie to pull her in closer. She looks down that monster's mouth to see a bloody skull, and it speaks to her in a soothing mother's voice. Tiny little strings begin to be pulled from Sadie's face. Her life force is being absorbed by the monster. And of course, Dad runs in to ruin such an intimate moment and stabs the thing in the neck with a broken piece of Sadie's hockey stick. Sadie gets her lighter and Sawyer's spray can and starts burning the fucker, but the can runs out of juice. Sawyer, with the assist again, dumps gas on it, and Sadie tosses her mother's lighter and seals the deal for the boogeyman's life with fire. The kids grab the dad and they all limp their way out of the house. The black spider webbings make sure that the entire house burns down along with the beast. Damn, this family really can't catch a break. We jump to the kid's therapist's office and Will finally opens up about his wife's death and how he was affected by it. Everyone comes together and they start to walk out. Sadie is the last one out and hears the doctor's voice calling her back into the room. She goes and the room is empty, but the closet door is open. She approaches, places a hand on the doorknob. The therapist comes out from behind. "Can I help you with something?" Sadie sighs, closes the door, and the movie ends.
What? Oh, come on!
That made no fucking sense. Think about it. If the doc asked that, "Can I help you with something?" that would mean that she didn't call her back into the room. So it had to have been the boogeyman mimicking her voice. But Sadie closing the door has absolute dick to do with whether or not the monster is going to fuck with their lives anymore. The boogeyman picked the family because it jumped from Lester to the family after he died. If the movie wanted to give off the impression that this is not over, they failed in their delivery. If the movie wanted to give off the impression that this is over and that she's moving on, they failed in that delivery. You turning your back on and ignoring the monsters in your life didn't work for Freddy Krueger, and it's not gonna work here. Overall, I did like the movie. I liked the scares and I liked the monster and even the characters. The writing could use a little tune-up. Other criticisms that are fair: flashlights. There are no flashlights in a movie about a monster that hides in the dark.
You serious, Clark?
Here's the thing, we already have a movie like that. It was called Lights Out.
What else could it be?
A trap.
In fact, we had another movie like that. It was called The Tooth Fairy. Not to shit on the boogeyman too much, but the idea of a monster who is either afraid of the light or the light is its weakness, it's not really an original idea. It has been done before. It's even been done well before. I can speak in defense of Lights Out, but Tooth Fairy, it's been a while, so I might have to give it a rewatch, but there is no one movie that can have sole possession of a monster that only exists in the dark. That is why I am a bit more forgiving that this house didn't have a single flashlight in it, and that's all I gotta say about the flick. Good and bad. I still think this movie deserves a higher rating and is worth your money in seeing it in theaters. Stay spooky, we got a lot to discuss in the coming weeks.
Promise me.